All right, welcome to the Path Less Travel podcast. This week we feature Congressman Rudy Yakym. Rudy, thank you for joining us today.
It is great to be with you, Craig.
I am thrilled to be able to allow you to share some of the knowledge that you've taught me over the years. Every time we have a conversation, I leave learning something new. So I'm excited for you to hopefully share that with many more people. But before we do, I want to put you in a scenario that you're probably not familiar with. Let's say you've got your family's out on vacation and nobody's emailing you, nobody's calling you. You have your own time, which you probably never get. What kind of things do you like to do?
I'm probably going to be doing something like firing up the grill, the front of the grill, the smoker out back. Could be, out exercising. Might be out flying. One of the hobbies I have is I fly anything you can fly with a remote control. Could be airplanes, seaplanes, helicopters, drones, all that stuff. But I'm also still working on my pilot's license, and so we might be flying a small airplane, just practicing a few touch and goes. So any of those are within the realm of possibilities.
And where do those interests come from?
I would say since childhood, I've had just an overall fascination with aviation. Anything that flies, and just that I was always that kid looking up into the sky, wondering how it works, and just saying, I'm going to fly one of those someday. And so it's a childhood fascination, but also if you look at the things that I find myself in pursuit of, they're always endless pursuits. And if you think about something like aviation or outer space, which is another hobby / passion of mine, they're all endless pursuits. You can never actually totally arrive in that space.
Well, let's put the political hat back on. Why politics?
For me, politics is a means to an end. A lot of people view politics as the end. For me, it's a means to an end, and the end is good policy. The end is advocating for people. It is helping people get something that they need or want or earned, maybe a veteran who has earned something while serving in war. Those are the things that really gets me up and going every day. So the whole process of becoming an elected official, which is how we think about the political side of my life and of my job, is really the means to an end. But the end is what you get to do with that once you're an elected official.
So we've known each other for a number of years now, I guess we could say
25 years probably.
How long have you known that you wanted to pursue this space?
For me, it's always been about helping other people achieve what they want to achieve. And so or said another way, helping other people get to where they want to go. And so I really spent a big chunk of my life, whether it's in business or even being involved in other people's campaigns or other people's political lives, helping them achieve things that are good outcomes for them or for their constituents. And for me, when this opportunity came up, through the tragic and unfortunate timing of the passing of my predecessor, Jackie Walorski, who died on August 3rd of 2022, to me this was an opportunity to help carry a big chunk of her legacy and her mantle forward, but also figure out what are some new ways that we can serve Hoosiers in Indiana's 2nd Congressional District.
You talk about service and helping other people. Where does that come from?
I think a big chunk of that is deeply rooted in my Christian faith. When you study, for example, the life of Christ, you find him always in service of other people. It's how I was raised in the home that I grew up in. But it's also when you look at people who just achieved great things in life, many of them did so because they were in service of other people. It's also where I get a big chunk of my internal and personal rewards from. Internally, I'm just find myself most at peace and most satisfied when I'm in service of others.
If you could just give us just a snapshot of your role here locally, regionally, and even nationally, what would that look like?
From a local perspective, it is making sure that Hoosiers have a voice in Washington. It is traveling around Indiana's 2nd District. In this district, we have about 750,000 constituents inside Indiana's 2nd District. And what we do is we really try to get to all 11 counties every single month, hear from Hoosiers what's on their mind, and then translate that to Washington. What we also do is we spend a lot of time focused on ensuring that they have access to the resources that they need through our federal government. It could be a veteran who's having a hard time, a problem with the VA. It could be a veteran who earned a medal in war that they never got, and we go to bat for them to make sure they got that medal. It could be someone who's having an issue with Social Security. It could be Medicare. It could be Medicaid. It could be an issue with the State Department and a passport issue. We are deeply connected with all of our federal agencies to make sure that when Hoosiers have a problem, we want them to think of our office first. And then you go to the federal level and you go to Washington and you get to represent those interests. And so it involves crafting legislation, moving legislation through committees, something that I'm working on a number of different bills right now. But it also means taking votes on the House floor that represent your constituents. I mean, and if you look at, Craig, the United States Constitution, every one of us has a job description. If you're employed today, you have a job description. And my job description can be found in Article 1 of the U.S. Constitution. That is the role and the outline for the legislature and the legislative branch that I'm honored to serve.
Well, if there's anything that I know about you is that you will never, ever be outworked. And I'm assuming that your team here locally and then out in D.C. take on that same identity. Talk to us about just the teams that you have that work on behalf of you.
That is exactly right. And one of the reasons, Craig, that I think that the approach that we take as a team is that we'll never be outworked is because the amount of effort that you put into something is well within your control. So much of what we do in life, we find ourselves reacting to an external set of circumstances. But the effort that we put in is within our control. And that's true with my team as well. And so on our team, we have here in the district a guy named Griffin Nate, 22 years old, youngest and best district director in the country, oversees our district operations. He's got a dual role. He also plays a role on the political side of our house as well. And it's his job to make sure that all of the calls that come in for our constituents and the casework that we take on, we did over 1,000 cases for our constituents last year. We're on pace right now to do about 2,000 cases for our constituents this year. And so Griffin oversees all of that. And then in Washington, my chief of staff, Ben Fulkowski, another guy I'm very fortunate to have on my team, is someone who's really built a world-class team in Washington. And your ability, Craig, to get elected is based on what you do in your district, but your ability to be effective is based upon what you do in Washington. And so between Ben in Washington and Griffin here on the ground, those two work very well hand in hand together, and they work hard all day, and sometimes it seems all night to get done what we need to.
Well, I don't want to not talk about the other team that you've assembled with the guidance of God. And what about the home team, your family, your support system here? Because, I mean, the pedal's to the floor for Rudy Yakym, and it's been that way since I've known you. Talks about the home team.
You know, this May, next month, my wife and I Sally Ann and I will celebrate 18 years of marriage. And I could not do what I do without her being right there by my side, being a main part of my support infrastructure, my top confidant in life, someone who has really supported me throughout this life journey. And I've supported her in a number of the things that she's doing as well. We also have 3 children, Elle, age 14, Rudy the fourth, age 13, and Eliza, age 9. And they are kids who Sally Ann and I are very, very proud of. But also, you can't do what you do without the support of the home team. I see, Craig, some of my other colleagues, and they don't have that support. And I'm telling you, it matters. And to have Sally Ann right there by my side for this whole journey is something I'll never take for granted.
Yeah, the title of this podcast is A Path Less Traveled. And you can't go as far as you've gone without that support system. But one thing I love about you, Rudy, is that not only you're a great leader, great follower of your faith, leader of your family, leader of your home, parent, husband. I love all those things about you, but why? Like, what was modeled at a young age, or like, why do you strive to be excellent in all aspects of life?
You know, I believe that nothing good ever happens at the okay level. And if you're going to do something, you shouldn't just, half bake it. You ought to be all in on whatever it is you're doing. And it's part of what helps me filter out things that I should or should not be doing. If you can't do it to an excellent level, I just don't think you should do it. And so for me, it's a lot of people believe that you talked about all those different roles, and a lot of people believe in balancing those roles. A big part of what has been modeled for me and what I think has helped make me successful is being able to integrate those roles. And it's about integration of each of those roles as opposed to fully balancing each of those roles. But you've got to do everything you do to a standard of excellence that is unparalleled and unmatched, because if you don't, you'll end up having regrets in life, and you won't live life to the fullest, and you'll just look back and say, man, I really could have done better at that. And I think that you really want to live a life of no regrets to the extent possible.
Let's shift to some leadership specific questions. You're making difficult decisions minute by minute. How do you do it?
When I think about, again, part of this is rooted in my faith. I go back to Proverbs chapter 11 and verse 14, where it talks about in a multitude of counselors, there is great wisdom. And I believe in a multitude of counselors. I believe in having people who you surround yourself with who are better than you are, who are wiser than you are, who have more experience than you are, and then going to them and pulling everything you can out of them. I remember one time in the last year, I was struggling with a really difficult decision, and I called one of my mentors and walked through this difficult decision. And one of the things that he told me in that moment, I'll never forget it. He said, when you're struggling with a difficult decision, you are oftentimes struggling between what you want to do versus what you should do. And there is the paradox that makes it difficult. And so really understanding what it is you want to do, but oftentimes answering the difficult question of what should you do is part of how I sort through difficult decisions. But really, Craig, it is a multitude of counselors. It is people I surround myself with who are better than I am, more experienced than I am, more wisdom than I am, and figuring out how do you pull all of that out of people as you're going through a decision-making process.
So as you're talking through these things, who comes to mind? Who are some individuals that, whether it be back in childhood or even to today, that have been a catalyst for your growth?
I can give you a whole long list of them. I mean, a lot of them are people right? I mean, I would start with my wife, Sally Ann. I would then run to people like Pastor Michael, Pastor Mike. I would think about people like Amish Shaw, Jacqueline Cronk, Chris Kraft, Daryl Doden, Doug Bloomhart, a friend from long time ago who's moved on to Nashville. A guy by the name of Pete Russin, who I believe you met. And I would add to that, look, Jackie Walorski, my predecessor, someone who I worked for 10 years ago. Jackie is someone who really, truly taught me how to be a fierce advocate for constituents. And that legacy is carried forward even with Griffin, who's here in the room with us today. Griffin and Ben are both worked under her, and we're taking that forward. So all of those people are folks who played some role in making me who I am. And I could give you, I mean, that's 8 or 10, I could give you 100 of them. And I really, truly believe, Craig, and I mentioned it before, in a multitude of counselors, people who are just simply better than you are, wiser than you are. They have a piece that you're missing that you need to acquire.
Fierceness, pedal to the floor, emptying the tank. It's what you do. How do you fill your tank? How do you stay sharp? What is it that you consume so you can wake up every day and do what you do?
For me to stay sharp and stay focused, a lot of it comes to doing the very basics well. And the basics are, it takes a bit of discipline and focus. And this is going to sound overly simple, but I'll just lay it on you. It is, number one, get enough sleep. Number two, eat healthy. Number three, exercise. And number four, I have this thing that I started years and years ago that I really get a lot of energy from. And that is, I have a group of friends. You know this, and you're one of them. I have a group of friends who I trust absolutely implicitly, and I speak with one person who's a friend who I trust implicitly every single day, and I get a lot of energy from that, and certainly stay sharp as a result of that. So those four things are really what keeps me sharp and focused. And add to that, spending time daily in the Word of God.
Well, that's a great segue to books that you would recommend beyond the Bible. we've shared titles back and forth. I know you're more of an audio guy. I'm more of a, textbook. It's sit down, paperback. What are some books that you would recommend that are just your favorite?
Sure. It's probably actually even easier to give you things that I've read recently. Reading right now a book called Lords of Easy Money. It's a book about the back end of the Federal Reserve Board. A friend named Stephanie Cerny actually recommended that to me. I'm reading Walter Isaacson's book on Elon Musk that really unpacks what he thinks and how he thinks. Currently reading a book on Marcus Aurelius. I am going through Band of Brothers, a very, very good book, just finished. Winston Churchill's autobiography. Those are just to name a few. And then there's another book called Disunited Nations, which rolls through what the United States of America did to construct the global world order in a post-World War II environment. Really a fascinating book of how nations around the globe are constructed and how they interact with each other economically and militarily.
I find it fascinating when you come across individuals that have loaded calendars, loaded schedules, and they're going from meeting to meeting. How do you decide what you say yes to and what you say no to?
In terms of what we say yes to, first of all, constituent meetings are always a priority. When someone wants my time here in the district or in Washington, not someone who's from Washington, but someone who comes from the district to visit me in Washington, those are all priority. That's really where our priorities lie. Outside of that, there has to be if it's things outside of that, I think about what is it that you want to accomplish long-term? What are your long-term strategic objectives? And you only have so much time in the day. And so when it comes to where you're spending time and how you're spending time, one of the things I've always lived most of my life this way is really focusing in on what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, an hour-by-hour basis. How does that fit into your long-term strategic objectives?
Do you have a favorite failure that you can point back on and say, wow, I took a huge step or steps of growth because of that thing?
Sure. Well, Craig, you knew me back in high school, and I'm a homeschool kid, preschool through high school. One of the things that you oftentimes think as a kid is you think you're good at everything. You think you're going to be great at everything. And I went out and went through a journey that led me to discover that my gifts from the Lord are from the neck up. I am telling you, Craig, I have no athletic ability whatsoever. There's actually only one thing athletically I can do, and that is ski, and that's it. Craig,
I didn't know this, by the way.
You're a basketball guy. Just to frame up my basketball skills or the lack thereof, I sat the bench on a homeschool basketball team. That's where we're at. And so I think that for me, Craig, that lesson taught me that you can't be good at everything. And so if you can't be good at everything, find the things that you are good at and really drill in and focus and become the best that you can possibly be at a few things, as opposed to trying to be good at everything. Because if you try to be good at everything, you'll be good at nothing.
In which you've accomplished a lot over your lifetime. Do you have something that you're most proud of?
Yeah, I'll give you one maybe personal and one professional. Look, on the personal side, and Sally and I talk about this all the time, we are very, very proud of the children that we have raised, the children that God has blessed us with. Yeah. My grandfather, Rudy Sr., once told me, when you have kids, they do not come with an instruction manual. You just have to figure it out. And we are very proud of the children that we've been blessed with and who they have become. The second thing that I would add is that I'm very proud of the team that we have, and that's the team on the ground here in the district, but also the team that we have in Washington. And it's in part because of who they are as a team, but even more so, it's about the things that we are able to do on behalf of Hoosiers because of the team that we have. Every day, it seems, Craig, I'm getting another story from our team on someone that needed something, they needed help. We were able to help them get something that they needed. And I'm just really, really proud of the things that we were able to do as a team on behalf of Hoosiers in Indiana's 2nd District.
As I open this up, I mentioned a lot of the advice that you've given me over the years. What advice would you give to yourself decades ago?
Quite simply, just keep going. Keep going, don't stop. And one of the things that I really did as a much younger person, still do today, is I found a whole list of people in life who had been there and done that. I mean, people who are, in their 40s, 60s, and 80s, even as a much younger guy, Craig. And I simply asked them if they had known back when they were younger, what would that they know now, what advice would they give themselves?
Right.
And I just went through, I mean, tens and tens, maybe even a few hundred people, it feels like, over the course of my life, and asked them those types of questions, and was able to really glean a lot of those insights from people who just, again, been there, done that, multitude of counselors, and I'm really glad that I did.
Two final questions for you. You've had this like rookie mindset about you since I've known you. It's always like one more rep, one extra step, do more. And you're constantly learning and having these breakthrough moments, and you don't quit, man. You don't quit. Why?
When you are absolutely convinced that you're climbing the right mountain, and you know that you are, there's no reason to quit. It's not within my nature. When you look throughout the course of human history and you look at the people who we remember in human history, the people that we teach about in history class, the people that we tell stories about, no one remembers the people who quit. It's the ones who didn't quit. It's the ones who didn't give up, the ones who kept going, the ones who pushed through no matter what the obstacles were that they faced. Those are the ones who end up accomplishing great things. And I also, it kind of goes back to where we started, Craig. When you look at the amount of effort that you give into something, the fact that you don't quit, that is one of the very few things that is within your control. Whether or not you quit is not subject to external circumstances. That is within you, and that's within what you can control. And I'm a big believer in focusing in and drilling in on what we can control, especially in a world where people are so focused on the external environment, on external circumstances, and reacting to those. I think we also have to focus on what we can control, and whether or not we give up, that's within us.
My last question is something that maybe you can or can't control, typically can't control. What's one of the kindest things that somebody has done for you, your family, you in your professional career, whatever it may be, man? What can you think of?
Yeah, I'll give you something general, and then I'll give you something really specific. From a general perspective, I think the most kind thing that people have ever done for me is simply given me their time. When you are you're trying to grow in life, you're trying to gain wisdom, you're trying to gain understanding, having mentors and people around you that are willing to answer your phone call and give you their time, I think is a very kind thing. And I say that, Craig, because time is the only resource that we have that is not renewable. You can always get more of everything else. You can get more money, you can get more food,
Right.
you can get more clothes, you get more of everything else. You cannot get more time. And so I think it's one of the kindest things in a general sense. Specifically, I'll actually tell you a little story. I mentioned earlier one of my mentors, Amish Shah. Back in 2017, Amish and he invited me to go to this charity event. It's a charity auction. And Amish and it was a golf outing, but there was an auction associated with it. Amish and I end up in a bidding war with each other on a silent auction. And we're writing down each other's names. We're outbidding each other on a book. And it was a book that I really wanted, and I believe that he really wanted. So we get, 5 or 6 bids deep. And I realized that, Amish is, he's a big time community leader. He's done very well. He's got a lot of money. And I'm a young kid. There's no way I'm going to outbid Amish Shah. So I did something I never do, which is I quit. I just give up. I let him win it. So he wins. He takes the book, and he takes the auction item or the bid sheet, and he stuffs it in the book, and he holds onto the book for 5 years with the intention of finding what he believed to be the perfect moment in giving it to me as a gift. And he comes over to my house within a few days after I won the November 22 election for Congress, and he has this whole thing wrapped up, and he tells me the story, which then jogs the memory. Mm-hmm. And he says, Rudy, I have been waiting 5 years for the right moment to give you this book. And the book is on display in my office in Washington. But I just thought it's just one of the most kind thoughtful gestures to think of something like that 5 years before, and just wait until the right moment to do it. I just really, it was a kind gesture that was not unnoticed, and one that will never be forgotten.
Well, I'd like to just provide you a little bit of time here in case there's anything that you want to, and any additional leadership nuggets or anything just here for individuals locally, any message that you want to share with anybody. The floor is yours.
From a leadership perspective, I always, one of the best pieces of advice I ever got was, don't be afraid to surround yourself with people who are better than you are at anything. And I'm really fortunate to have the team that I have that is much better than I am at so many things. And I think that's a key leadership principle, because so many people are intimidated when they surround themselves with people who are better than they are. And I think that that's a mistake in leadership. And I also think it's important to listen to your team and listen to the feedback that your team gives to you. It's also, Craig, I think it's important to surround yourself with people who are willing to give you very candid and unvarnished advice. And I think that part of what has made me who I am is being willing to surround myself with people that can just cut right to the core. And I do mean to the core of who I am, and break me down and rebuild me time and time again. And very few people, I think, are willing to subject themselves to that. But I do think it's a key component of leadership into how you can become who you are meant to be, and really how you can fulfill the maximum capacity and potential that you have while you're on this planet. And I'll also just close with this, Craig. I do encourage your listeners to reach out to our office. We want to be the go-to resource, your number one place you go to when you have a federal issue. It could be an issue in Washington legislatively, or it could be a constituent issue with a federal agency that you're having. We want people to think of Congressman Rudy Yakym's office first. So feel free to reach out anytime.
Well, I'd like to thank you for doing this. Thank you for leading from the front. Thank you for being an incredible leader of your faith, as a husband, as a dad, and taking time out of your day to do this. So I appreciate your friendship. Thanks for doing this.
You bet. Thank you, Craig.
All right, and that's it for this week's episode of The Path Less Traveled. Take care.